Each of these individuals up here are recipients of the Prime Minister's Award for Australian University Teacher of the Year. I mean, this is the most prestigious award that you can receive in the landscape of Australian higher education, learning and teaching. So it's a very significant award. The awards certainly, I really think from day one, having the Prime Minister's title attached to it was critically important. And the award is a hotly contested award. I can tell you that I have been involved from behind the scenes, and certainly the look on the individual's face when they win the award. The ceremony is typically an evening in Canberra, late in the year. We try and get the Prime Minister along. Certainly the Minister normally comes along. And there's an opportunity for people to celebrate with their families, but also their colleagues. So we have here 6 of our finest, going back over several years, and each of those 6 will have 5 minutes to make the presentation. Keithia is first off the rank. Keithia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. I would like to start in the spirit of reconciliation by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today, the Gadigal people, and pay respect to their elders past and present. With the flu, there are a few bugs in the higher education system at the moment, and we've heard a lot about those over the last 2 days. I worry that some of these bugs have the potential to escalate into an academic epidemic. The future for our students may be particularly influenced by a bug that's infecting university academics, the particularly nasty anti-engagement virus, Authenticus reductus. And you might remember Andrew Norton, first day, first thing, raised the importance of engagement, of student engagement. So what are the symptoms of anti-engagement infection? Cynicism, coping, anxiety about change, as was pointed out to us, thank you. Corrosive self-doubt about, are we actually achieving anything with our students? Are we making a difference? So what's the staff experience of Authenticus reductus? What's the student experience? Authentic engagement. We could fake it until we feel it, or we can consciously strengthen our academic immunity. Put another way, we can find more compelling reasons to get out of bed in the morning. Now, I know that the causes and contributors of all this are not just personal, because we've heard a lot about these systemic factors over the last 2 days as well. But let's just focus for this brief time on our personal bit of the engagement equation. Authenticus reductus is highly contagious. The future of our students depends on our immunity. One pathway to immunity and academic mental health is to reaffirm the fundamentals of our practice. So the focal question is, does what we do as educators make a difference to our students' experience or outcomes? Well, the fundamental idea of good teaching, that's what we're back to. There are a number of different ways to describe what this slippery idea might be, but there are some reasonably consistent and reassuring patterns from the research. This is one of them. Is good teaching worth the effort? Hell yeah. There's a plethora of research, cross-disciplinary also, that shows that good teaching enhances significantly student engagement, student satisfaction, student performance and generic skill development. Is appropriate assessment worth the effort? Absolutely. Aligned and well-managed assessments also significantly enhances those things. So the key message is we can confidently embrace the health-giving notion that what we do in the classroom, face-to-face or virtual, does make a difference. But a fuller movement towards academic health requires a little more of us. There's something essential underpinning all of this. We know about stimulating learning designs, helpful feedback, etc., but what sits at the heart of it? Well, essentially at the heart of the matter, good teaching is a relational enterprise. It's actually about a culture of respectful partnership between us and our students. A number of studies across modes of delivery reliably demonstrate that well-formed course design is a necessary but not sufficient condition for student satisfaction and success, but purposeful design plus relational course culture delivers superior outcomes across a range of measures. And so we're back to academic engagement. Many of our innovative paradigms have authentic engagement at their heart, and these are some of the ones we've talked about over the last 2 days, yeah? We cannot engage our students from a disengaged position. That's really clear. If we want them to be engaged, we have to be engaged. Thus, our students should be able to expect that we turn up and turn on and seek to lead them in their learning, no matter what the mode of delivery. So we are learners, we are leaders, we are learners and we are leaders in our classroom. Final thoughts on possible priorities for action. Well, both ourselves and our students are going to be better able to resist infection if we as individual academic professors design our curriculum for the world that's coming, not the one we remember, nor the one we wistfully imagine, and as a baby boomer I can say that. Embrace our context, so teach the students we have, not the students such as mine, with a very high non-traditional student intake. So we're teaching non-traditional and traditional students, and we need to embrace that and work effectively with them. Both ourselves and our students are going to be better able to resist infection if our host systems, so if we step back and say institutionally what can we do? Well, leadership narrative. Build an integrated narrative around the engaged leadership of learning and teaching from course or unit convener right through to university executive, and of course with reward structures and systems built into that. But that leadership narrative is critical. Leadership development provides staff with the practical skills and settings to act as engaged leaders. Encouraging academic generosity. Find ways to support and strengthen our colleagues' immunity to disengagement. So genuine, collegiate, stronger support of each other. And a final booster, students need many things. We know this, but mostly they actually need us. And that's not a narcissistic statement. That's well established in the research, around the quality of learning and teaching. So let us not only be engaged, let us be very engaged. Thank you.
Yeah, you got the next slide? Here we go. Thanks, Keithia. Lots of information there. Mine is very, very simple, but I thought I better let you know. I received the Prime Minister's Award in 1998. That's a long time ago. That's 16 years ago. So I thought I better provide some evidence that I'm actually authentic. So, we've talked a lot about big data and learning analytics. So one piece of evidence is I'm on the program. The next piece of evidence is there's an image of me there holding the award. And I know of one person that's here. So triangulating all that evidence, just wanted to, given I'm pre-20th century, the old recipient. At the time of receiving the Prime Minister's Award, I was a young, energetic, passionate, enthusiastic computer scientist, level A, and I still hold at least one of those qualities. Tom Stanage, he was the Professor of History from the University of Western Australia. He was actually the first recipient of the award. He passed away 2 years ago at the age of 68. So I thought, for those of you that are interested. So my response to this question, at the heart of the matter, the future of our students has been influenced by, I guess, my National Teaching Fellowship, where I visited about 27 universities, a couple of TAFEs and private providers. And I'm not going to mention all of them. I'm going to draw on 3 of them. Of course, the biggest influences come from Monash. I've been at Monash over 30 years, so of course that's the biggest influence. So the future of our students is going to be brilliant. It'd be really brilliant if universities could spell. But the essence is we need to reflect on what we do. We need to reflect on our mistakes and think about our future. And the reason why I say it's going to be brilliant is because of the choice and the quality that we offer our students. We have got quite a number of universities, 39 universities, a mixture of the GO8s, the ATNs, the IRUs, the regional networks. The universities are increasing in their rankings. We're in this competitive market. We want to be ranked number 1 in these international league tables. Monash's mission is to be number 1 in the Asian region. Yesterday we heard of Melinda Waters talk about the TAFE colleges and how 10 of them are offering higher education programs to provide pathways from vocational education and training into higher ed. We also heard from Andrew Norton. He talked about new private providers coming into our system and the competition that will be placed on our courses. Our universities offer a rich variety of courses and programs. They cover a wide multitude of disciplines, and their outcomes are aligned with national and industry standards. And our quality is monitored by TEXA, and also we heard Andrew talk about the new Quilt, which is replacing my university website. But at the heart of the matter is, what is your institution doing to give students a brilliant and quality learning experience? Okay, the next, my next point is influenced from the Deakin perspective. So the future of the students from the Deakin perspective is in the clouds. We heard Bev this morning say that 25% of their students are enrolled in the cloud, and the other 75 are on campus but they never see them, so they're probably engaged in the cloud as well. So here students have freedom and access to online information. We've seen rapid advances in technology, and now every university has got a LMS. We heard from Kerry Lee Krause yesterday morning talk about the University of Western Sydney's blended strategy. The question is not whether we blend, but how do we blend and what to blend. This online component of all our courses allows us to capture buckets of data. How we store this data, how we use it, how we interpret it was a discussion of this morning, and also yesterday's panel conversation. I was particularly impressed with what Shirley and Gregor had to say about making sense of the data. So we're not just checking what buttons students click, or what they download, but we want to see how they've engaged cognitively and emotionally. And then, of course, there's social media, which is entering our worlds as well. Every high school student has a Facebook account, except, of course, my two daughters. They remind me every day they don't have Facebook accounts. But that comes with a whole multitude of challenges that we need to address and consider. But at the heart of the matter is, how is your university exploiting technology and managing these large, huge amounts of data to give students that brilliant learning experience? And then finally, I respond to the question from a QUT influence. QUT is the only real university. They are the university for the real world. Our planet, our people face some real challenges. The World Health Organization states that obesity has reached epidemic proportions. 2.8 million people die each year from obesity or being overweight. 20% of the world's children have mental health disorders. Our planet is suffering from global warming and climate change. We are depleting our Earth of its resources. We just heard Helen talk about 61% of the world don't have internet access. And Sally O'Sullivan mentioned yesterday that we've got some real issues and challenges with our Indigenous folk. So we need to think about how we are making our students ready for the real world. This morning, Bev Oliver spoke about assuring graduate outcomes, and just prior to lunch, we had a plenary of people talking about OLT Commission projects and fellows talking about how they're going to develop employability skills in their graduates. But at the heart of the matter is, what real-world global challenges will your students be able to deal with? So to conclude, the future of our students is brilliant, in the clouds, but for the real world. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm James. How's it going? Hi everyone. Yeah, that's better. It's my PhD. It's like my first year students. I say hi. I expect them to say hi back. I don't start. So I just first of all, just want to also acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we meet today, the Gadigal people, and acknowledge elders past, present, and future. I also want to thank the OLT for putting this on. It's been an incredibly stimulating event. I've really enjoyed it, and I just want to say, with a shaky voice and a nervous feeling, how humbled I am to be on stage in front of with these amazing group of inspiring people, but also in front of so many great teachers that I know here. So on the way here this morning, my mum called at 8:45, like she does if it's been more than 24 hours since I called her, and she's Greek mother, and she rings me up, and if I don't call her for more than 2 days, I get this phone call. The phone rings and it says "Mum" on the phone, and I pick up the phone and I always know what the first word's going to be, and I'll translate in Greek for you, and the words are always, "It's your mother." I called to say goodbye because today could be the last day. No guilt at all, right? Being Greek, guilt is what we were served in the morning, right? As they said. And so I'm like, "Mum, I'm sorry. I start apologising as I always do, and I'm saying, "I'm really sorry, Mum." And she's like, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm just really nervous. I'm speaking at the at this function." And she goes, "What function is it?" I said, "Oh, the people that I'm translating from Greek, right? You don't need, unless you speak Greek, you don't. So I'm translating. I'm like, "Mum, the people that gave me their award." And she says, yeah, which people? I said, the Prime Minister's teacher. She says, "Oh, which award?" And I said, "The Prime Minister University of the University of the Year award." She goes, "Will the Prime Minister be there? Because if he is, I won't translate that part." So I did when I was invited here, I did what all my students do. I went to Wikipedia and I typed "the future is," and these are the first two images that came up. The future is yours, or the future is about a state of fear. And these are the kind of two extremes that we're given about what to expect. And I'm like, okay, so how do I prepare my students for either one that's, the world is in their hands, or one where we're all going to die, right? So this is I think one of the environments that we're operating in. So what is the future for our students? Well, what does it look like? Well, from Bev, we saw Maxwell Smart this morning, but this is from Space 1999. It's 15 years past that, and the world looks nothing like that. So in a way, we think that, we have all these images of the future, and they're all kind of a bit wacky, and we're never really sure how that's going to end up. In saying that, Space Trek does predict the future, as my students like to tell me. This was an image from 1987 episode where the captain is looking at at what eventually became, looks like an iPad thingy. Okay, but the chances are that the future is going to look more like this. That is, it's going to look like today, right? So, our students, we are in the future. Our students are doing things now, and we're doing things now which are futuristic. So, we're talking about the future. I think we don't have to look very far. I think we need to look into the kind of patterns that are emerging today, the changing career structures, the idea that students see themselves as consumers, and this is often jars against what we're used to and what we kind of were raised with or became academics with. So how do we prepare for the future? If I listen to my colleagues, this is what the future for universities looks like: death, debt, and destitution, right? And so, we're all going to die. Of course we're going to die, right? But we're all going to die a destitute, debt-ridden death, and it's going to be just horrible. Then we should all just move to New Zealand, and take our students with us. And so, and I really want to visit New Zealand. Please invite me. After this presentation, probably not. But anyway, but in case you do, this is my best stuff. And so is this the future? And I think, look, the truth is that we really don't know what the future is going to look like. Even though it's here and now, because this was a mobile when I was growing up, right? This is a mobile where most of us was growing up, and a mobile is now a very, very different thing. So the question is, things change in a way. Things change very slowly, but in other ways they change rapidly. So in a way, we're dealing with, and it's a bit of a tautology. We are dealing with unknown futures that are really hard to imagine, even though they're around us, because things are changing so quickly. I don't know how true this statistic is, and when you hear these cliches, you always wonder how true they are. But the idea that data doubles every 5 years, and all these inventions continue to emerge so quickly that we can't keep up. So it is here. So I suppose one of the things I've become obsessed about as an educator is how do I deal with this with students in this changing environment? How do I, as an educator, prepare students for this kind of turbulent time, these changing times? So I just want to briefly kind of talk about the principles I'm embedding into a program that I've helped develop at the University of Western Sydney called the Academy at UWS, and hopefully you'll see how this is kind of looking at kind of preparing students for the future. So the one is, the first thing is I admit to students that the future is uncertain and that anything I tell them is speculation. And I think being honest about the future of their careers and the future of prospects that they have, I think is really, really important. That's not being depressing, that's just sort of being honest. And I think that opens up their students' eyes a great deal. For example, I had a guest speaker talking about who worked as an aeronautical engineer in Australia. That industry closed down where she was working, and she thought, what more prestigious and guaranteed job for a future is aeronautical engineer? Well, that disappeared out of Australia, went to Singapore and elsewhere. And so she said, so what do we do? So one of the things I think is to admit to students that we're living in these uncertain futures. The second thing is I think we really need to smash silos. And it was interesting discussions earlier today in one of the panel sessions about, generalist degrees versus specialist degrees. I just think there's got to be both degrees. I think every specialist degree should have some generalist aspects, and some generalist degrees should actually have chance for students to find areas that they really are passionate about and to pursue. I think we've got to promote aesthetics as actually a discipline, and I'm talking about this across degrees. I think today, when was the last time you bought something that was functional but ugly? We don't do that anymore. We don't sit there and say, oh yeah, I know it's pretty ugly, but it was only $79. It's like, no, it doesn't matter if it's $79, $59 or $1,000, we want it to look good. And I think this has to be a new graduate attribute we embed across all degrees, because aesthetics is actually one of the defining features, I think, of this new age. I think, and we heard a lot about this before, about the idea of changing literacy. What literacy means today is something that's very different. And it was a couple of years ago now that Mission Australia did that survey where they found that 40% of young people in this survey said that the most trusted source of information was internet. And so all you got to do is type in climate change into the internet to see that it's not really something you should trust. So it is one of those areas that I think we really need to redefine what we mean by literacy. I think we need to encourage our students to be nimble, and here again, we've heard words like adaptable, but I think this changing environment requires us to be able to have students change their perception of the world and what they expect and how to adapt very, very quickly. I don't use the word flexible because flexible has obviously work choices connotations, and I don't want to be getting into that space, but I think nimble is a more descriptive word of that type of area. So two last points. One, I think we have to teach students to work in cross-discipline teams and cross-cultural teams. I think that's a really, really important environment. And finally, and this kind of picks up the 2 points what was said earlier, is the importance of modelling the behaviour that we expect from our students. If you don't want to be there, I don't know how you can expect the students to want to be there. If you don't practice interdisciplinarity, I don't know how you expect the students to practice interdisciplinarity, and so on. So I think it's really, really important that the students see you modelling the behaviour that you're. I have a 17-year-old daughter, which I became her guardian about a year ago, and the most important thing the most important thing I learned from her is I can't actually ever sit down and say to her, we need to talk. She always just looks at me and says, no, we don't, and walks away. But I always see her mimicking the behaviour that she sees in Alex, my partner, and I. And I think that's our students, right? And if we have that enthusiasm, if we have that encouragement, if we have that engagement and that passion, then it rubs off on our students. And finally, an ethical framework, which I think is really, really important. I've been doing a lot of research now about, I won't get into it, but just to say, no matter who I interview about what future students, what are the most important attributes in the students, everyone, no matter if they're from the IT industry, from the army, from NGOs, keeps on talking about we need to promote an ethical framework amongst graduates. Gives them a way to see the world and be able a way to assess the challenges that they're facing, and that's fundamental. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Most of the things I wanted to say perhaps have been said. So I hope I shall not be accused of plagiarizing. First of all, I'd like to thank the Office for Teaching and Learning for organizing this conference. And I think it's provided us the opportunity to discuss and share many of the challenges and also opportunities in learning and teaching in higher education. Indeed, some very interesting views have been expressed over the last couple of days, and more interesting questions, I think, have been asked, and challenges have been posed. From that perspective, well done, OLT. I hope we have more conferences like this, where we get opportunities to really engage in designing or thinking about designing the activities or the curriculum that are likely to meet the expectations of our 21st century learners. So with that hope, I'd like to now flick through a few slides. I'm not going to read out all of these, and as I said, it's been all said. The point I want to make is that Australian higher education sector, as we all know, has gone through significant changes in recent times. And if anything is certain for the future, it's more change. So far, I think, in my view, the Australian higher education sector has shown significant resilience, and also the people who work in them, and of course our students as well. So what do the recent changes or the proposed changes mean for our students? How are our students likely to respond? In my view, depending on the scale of the changes or proposed changes to come, students are likely to think differently. Differently in terms of what they want to study, where they want to study, and why. Will students' expectations intensify? I think we have seen some discussions around this. My personal opinion is that they will. Students will definitely be asking more questions on what they are expected to learn and why. They will be asking how each subject relates to their program of study, how learning activities and assessment tasks provide them the knowledge and skills they need to be employable. Now, as we have been reminded over the last 2 days, we have to continually explore new and innovative ways of doing things. And we have seen some great examples yesterday as well as today in this conference on synergies that exist among student learning outcomes, graduate attributes, professional competencies, and academic standards. As long as we are mindful of the disciplinary and institutional contexts, as well as the student backgrounds, we should be able to leverage these synergies to present a holistic picture to our students on where they're heading through their program of study and how. And what appears to me personally to be most useful is to present this holistic view to students upfront as they commence their journey as students in higher education. Is it all that simple? I don't think I'm making that suggestion. In fact, the perception of a tick box approach to accomplishing these tasks may not do justice to the time and devotion required to make these processes work as intended. So perhaps a rethinking of the teaching roles and workload model is something the sector needs to consider seriously. And of course, this needs to be complemented by appropriate recognition and reward mechanisms. A theme of the conference, I believe, is higher education in the digital era. The large majority of us use online technology in one form or another to provide students with alternative and interactive learning resources and activities. They range from lecture recordings, podcasts, to online quizzes, to animations, and all those sorts of things. And students love them. At least in my experience, I have seen students do appreciate flexible alternative resources. As innovative technologies continue to emerge, students will want to have newer, more flexible alternative form of learning resources to complement their on-campus learning. Finally, what extra value will on-campus learning offer compared to cheaper online and MOOCs alternatives? I often come across many students who value the personal interactions in campus setting, both with staff as well as with their peers. More importantly, as I come from engineering discipline, the question I often ponder about is how can practical knowledge and skills in disciplines such as engineering be developed fully online, where the touch and feel of actual machines, the designing, the synthesizing, the implementing, and the testing are of paramount importance. I think our students will be well informed to know the difference, and if not, the onus will be on us and the higher education providers to make it so. Thank you very much.
Right, I've got 5 minutes and I've got 5 idea bubbles, all right? And that's all they are, I'm afraid. I don't like giving talks like this that don't have any sort of research basis to it. But anyway, here we are. The future of our students will need creativity and imagination. I mean, what's going to distinguish the students from the robots that are going to do a lot of work in the future, the intelligent computers, the prefabrication, the IKEA approach to everything. Where are humans going to fit into all of this? Well, what distinguishes them is basically creativity and imagination. Okay, so we really do need to give students opportunities on a continuous basis, I think. It's not just one or two things, on a continuous basis. Be creative. Think about this in a different way. I'm really worried about this digital human interface that students are. I don't know about you, but I'm having enormous trouble focusing now because I'm an old person. I can't help it. I've got an iPad, and I'm trying to listen to people. I'm just so easily distracted, and I can't cope. Now, I know the students are better able at doing that, but I really do think we need to help students to think seriously about this problem. When do you stay in the moment? It's Peter Goodyear's idea about the defragmentation of relationships. I really worry about how we can help our students to focus their attention, to concentrate for a particular length of time on something significant. Now, maybe this is just an old guy talking, but I worry about the fact that we've had 40,000 years, as more than that, 200,000 years as a species, but 40,000 years to evolve into social animals and social learners. So students love that. But we only have 30 years to sort of cope with technology. Now, this is frightening the daylights out of me. You can wear glasses now that have a computer in them, So if you get an Abbott-style wink, are they changing the page or are they actually trying to say something to you? I mean, I don't know the interface there. Do I look at the person's face or their screens? And now Sid and Russell are telling me that they can be having a virtual experience and not even thinking and talking to me at all. So I think it's scary. Anyway, I think we need to help our students confront that. Okay, this is my big point. I really think this is a century of the brain, and we really should all be paying lots of attention to what we're learning from cognitive science research. And we need to help our students to think about the way the brain learns and the way we can help focus attention, the working memory, fixed capacity, and how we can integrate long-term memories into short-term memories into long-term memories. So, you know, there is so much we know about that. Of course, you know, it goes without saying the future is going to be much more individualised. I mean, the days of going to the doctor and getting a standard script are almost over, that we're all going to be getting individualised drug treatments. And so we should all be getting and expecting an individualised learning delivery in a sense. And so how do we cope with that? And we've heard so many great ideas today about that. And so how do we get students to feel that they are individuals? I think that's really important, because with technology we're becoming more and more sort of one size fits all, I think. Anyway, and then finally, my other big idea, of course, is that I think we need to be much more visual and less text-based, because simply everything that I'm learning from the work I'm doing with students is that they don't read. Well, certainly the students that I largely deal with do not read. And in fact, they reject anything but a slab of text more than about 14 words. And so really, if you've got, you know, diagrams and things, well, seriously, we've just done some analysis on some web pages, and students are just not, I don't know the text, you know, it's all the reading, you know. So, I mean, we should be able to tell stories visually. And I think that that is the way it's going. The students are looking for YouTube movies. So let me give you the most important idea in science, essentially. Why does anything happen? It happens because of the second law of thermodynamics, which basically says that all change is a consequence of the purposeless dispersal of matter and energy into disorder. In other words, everything gets worse. And that happens all the time. Any change. And so then how can we ever get complexity? How can we actually get a living chemical system? Well, a net change that way can drive small, local increases in complexity. And so, but that's tied to that. But you'll always get a bigger change. Any change that happens will give you more dispersal than you'll get increase in complexity. So the sun drives this planet. And it's the dispersal of energy there that's driving the formation of life on this planet. Anyway, that's, in a sense, a visual way of saying something that can be said in lots of mathematics. But there are 5 ideas. Thank you.
I'm glad I get to go last, because I'm actually a post-PowerPointist, so no PowerPoint from me. I thought I'd come out with one big idea and try and keep it concrete. I think actually the future for our students is already arriving, and it is that we will have a unisectoral approach to education, one that is underpinned by the idea that it's talent and not time served, and that it's actually proficiency and not gateways that get you to your destination. So education will no longer be defined by age, but actually defined by talent. Pretty bold idea. Think K to 16, as was mentioned this morning, but not something as simple as a racetrack, because there's 2 things that I think need to happen in order to get us there. The first is concerns adaptive learning. A lot of the talk around adaptive learning happens at the course level and at the program level, but actually we need it to work at the lifetime level, and we need it to work across our sectors. The fact that we have a primary, a secondary, a tertiary and vocational sector is deeply problematic. Deeply, deeply problematic. Imagine me sitting in a discussion last week with a senior secondary accreditation authority and having to explain to them that yes, of the 18,000 people that took Paul Francis's MOOC on astrophysics, 1/3 of them were high school students, and actually some of them were in year 10 in the ACT, and they shouldn't be doing it because they can only really officially do it in year 11 and year 12. My view is if they can do it, they can do it, and if they succeed, go ahead. Them and the 83 primary school students that were enrolled in that MOOC. It's like being overtaken by a 90-year-old runner. Just let it go, okay? If a primary school kid is better at astrophysics than you, better at calculus, let that be the world. But in order to do that, we have to rethink adaptive learning. And that means that we have to stop talking about our own individual student systems, not having access to the Chesham number, and actually having a sectoral approach to big data management, not little institutional data management, where we actually can see how somebody is doing. Think transcendence, but in a positive way. So not Johnny Depp controlling your life, but actually the Internet of Things in which everybody is able to succeed in their own way. The second thing that needs to happen is that we need to change fundamentally the way we think about pathways. When I hear the word pathways, people typically use it to describe a deficit of learning. People are on a pathway program, a foundation program. These two words apparently are code for didn't get the ATAR, not quite ready for university. The problem is there's a whole heap of students that are ready to go to university before they finish school. It's not that they have a deficit of learning, they actually have a surfeit of learning, but the curriculum holds them back. Now, a number of us have tiny programs whereby Year 11 and Year 12 students engage in extension. We have 240 of those students at ANU right now. These students are capable of tertiary study. They don't need a pathway program, they actually need permission for what I'd call simultaneous learning, whereby they can hold down high school studies and university studies at the same time. So what I don't want is a racetrack where I can only go in one direction and I'm only given permission to go in that slip lane if I've missed something. I actually need permission to engage in 2 laneways at the same time, or maybe even 3, to make sure I am performing at my very best. So a pathway is not therefore a gap rectifier or amelioration. It is actually an opportunity for a student perhaps to simultaneously play in all 3 or all 4 sectors, to assemble, to aggregate, to put together qualifications. Now, how do I know that this is going to happen? Well, the first thing, I know that a lot of my students at ANU are already using Sal Khan. Thank you, Sal Khan, for your cheap little videos showing people how to do things. He's had over 480 million downloads. Somebody's using it out there, and they're not all university students. They're high school students. They're accessing it. I can see the data on our MOOCs, and I know that high school students are dipping in there and using the materials. They might not go for the certificate at the end, but they're certainly dipping into that space and should be permitted to do so and should be encouraged to do so. Okay? And I can also see the future too when we introduced this year at ANU flexible double degrees, where we allowed students to put any 2 degrees together. They began to cast out pathways for themselves, some of which we hadn't anticipated. We could have all guessed that students would put actuarial studies and engineering together because they couldn't get enough maths. And I've made two people's lives this year, and they told me that their dream had come true in the form of that double degree combination. I'm hoping in future they will rule the world and they will remember us and make a nice big donation, which is fantastic. What I had not anticipated was that students would enrol in a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of International Relations. And why did they do that? Well, they love the humanities, but they didn't think the BA would get them a job, but the BIR would get them a job. And then I found some students putting medical science together with music and with visual arts. One for the head, one for the heart. The future for students is ones where they are treated in the way that we treat them in student services. We talk all the time about integrating our services, not making students the aggregator of learning, but aggregating our services to them. But our sectors do not follow that talk at all. So the future, the heart of the matter is that education should be aggregated for the student, adaptive at lifetime learning, and one in which the notion of pathways is rich, vocational, primary, secondary and tertiary. Thank you.